Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. This is your host, Howard Fox. The Outdoor Adventure Series celebrates individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration and enjoyment of the great outdoors. Our guest today is Chris Midgette. Chris is a lifelong outdoor adventure enthusiast that writes about dogs, hunting, and stories from the field. Most of his stories involve his Boykin Spaniels, Cooper or Traveler, as they chase waterfowl and upland birds across the U.S. Chris, it's a pleasure to have you on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Howard. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. Well, Chris, before we get started, I want to share with you, I was incredibly envious because I was seeing pictures of you down in the Outer Banks. I believe that was like Charleston, South Carolina area, yeah. Joint oysters and beer.
Yes.
And I was thinking, oh man, this guy is, I'm going to get on his case for that. I was like, can you ship a few of those up here out west to me? But you had your fill, I would imagine.
Yeah, we chowed down on some oysters and had some pretty good beer and some bourbon. We're at the Southeastern Wildlife Expo that they have every February down there. It's just what it sounds like, a big, there are a lot of vendors. They have dogs. They have, everything from camels for kids to ride to famous artists. So it was the 40th one. I hadn't been in a couple of years, but it was the 40th one that they did this year. I've never seen it more packed. So it was a great time.
Fantastic. I am going to have to begin to put some of these events on my to-do list because that sounds like a great time.
Yeah, especially if it's in Charleston. You can't ever go wrong going down there. It's a beautiful city.
Now, are you originally from the South or Mid-Atlantic area? Where are you originally from?
Pretty much. I was a Navy brat. I was born in California, raised in Northern Virginia. Well, so I was about 5 or 6, then moved to the Mid-Atlantic area of Virginia, and then went to college down in Charleston, and for whatever reason moved away back to Virginia. So hopefully a couple of years I'll make it back down to Charleston or the Outer Banks, North Carolina. That's the goal in the next 5 years, is to move back down there.
That sounds like a great plan. You're in cold Wisconsin right now.
Yes, I do a lot of traveling for work, and I was just telling you, I went from 75 degrees in Charleston and sunny to, I think it's 15 here and snowing. We're supposed to get maybe a foot tonight, so
all right, so
down in the hotel.
Hopefully, well, at least you're in a hotel. You don't have to worry about getting that snowblower
right.
gassed up and ready to go. And fantastic. Well, listen, before we kind of dive into this passion of yours, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit now, share a little bit about your background and about your growing interest in hunting, especially in the whole waterfowl genre of this interest of yours.
Yeah. So I was raised duck hunting by my dad. My brother hunted. He was 4 years older than me. He hunted a little bit, but it was really my dad and I that I got the addiction from him. And he always had a very big appreciation for the history of the sport. I actually have a story about him, just kind of, he's very set in his old school ways, using gear that he's had for 30 years. But the history of the sport, the tradition of the sport, any real, I think, hunter would tell you it's not necessarily about bagging game. It's just being outside with your family, your friends, and then obviously the dogs. I do enjoy hunting, but hunting with my family and hunting with my dogs really is what makes it. So yeah, I've been duck hunting basically since I was 7, and then I got into upland birds probably 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay. Now, you and I met via the Outdoor Writers Association's Facebook page, and have you met Edgar Castillo
So Edgar is actually who got me in the OWAA. Yeah, he's such a great guy. So helpful. He and I talk probably on a weekly basis, if not more. He's really kind of mentored me as far as how we can look at one hunt and get a couple different stories out of it. So I bounce ideas off of him, and then Rob Moore, I talked to him a lot. So yeah, he got me in the OWAA after I wrote my first article. The editor of Hunting Dog Confidential suggested I get in touch with Edgar, and we've been talking ever since then. So yeah, he's a great guy.
That's fantastic. Yeah. The other episode we did was with Pat Ray. He's into chucker hunting.
Oh, those are a whole nother level of torture from what I've read about them. So I haven't hunted them myself, but yeah, they're a tough bird.
All in good time.
Right.
So when you got started hunting with your dad, and I have to admit, I've had a gun in my hand twice in my life.
Right.
Okay. It was at a range.
Uh-huh.
I enjoyed it, but since I've been involved with the Outdoor Writers Association, I have a whole, and meeting guys like you, I have a whole new appreciation. Like I would just like to tag around along with you guys just with my camera and take
Right.
pictures of you guys hunting. I think that'd be kind of cool. And be with dogs. I mean, how can you go
Absolutely.
wrong being with dogs?
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Yeah.
Now, when you went out with your dad when you were younger, was it just you and your dad? Did you have dogs then and other members of the family would all go out? How did you?
So I guess it was really my dad's uncle that got him into hunting. His dad didn't really hunt. So it kind of just became me and my dad. Now, my dad did have friends that hunted. So before we had our own boat for duck hunting, it'd be my dad, myself, and maybe one of his friends or maybe two of his friends. And just, I guess, like I said, it was more or less just being with dad. I mean, we'd get up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe 4 o'clock in the morning, drive. My dad still to this day drives nothing but old 1990s, 1980s Jeep Grand Wagoneers. So, of course, they're little tanks. I mean, I remember riding on the leather bench seats in those. My most famous hunts aren't the ones where we shot a lot of birds. It was just being out there. So I think that's the biggest thing as far as talking to non-hunters. It's the bagging of birds is just a bonus. It's really just being out there. So I have a lot of people that don't hunt, but they want to come watch the dogs and take pictures. Cause I mean, you see some really cool stuff out in the wild that you just don't see. If you don't put the time out there. And obviously us as hunters, we're out there for 10, 12 hours a day. But yeah, we did have our own dogs. My dad got his first Boykin 1979, 1981, somewhere around there. It's the state dog of South Carolina. My dad also went to college in South Carolina. So that's how he got his first one. And we've had him ever since. So yeah, we started with Jeb. He was the first one, then Molly, and dad's probably had 6 or 7 since then, I think.
So the Boykin is really the dog of choice for just they're built for this type of
Well,
sport.
it depends on who you talk to. Everyone will, obviously, the lab is the most popular breed in the U.S. It's the most popular hunting breed in the U.S. A lab is very versatile. It was bred for duck hunting. In South Carolina, long story short, a guy found this brown dog in the early 1900s that figured out that he liked to fetch. So he gave it to this guy named Mr. Boykin, and he started breeding it. And so they don't really know for sure where the first Boykin came from. But when you're duck hunting in South Carolina, you're not hunting. It's not super cold. It's not big water. So you don't need a big, strong swimmer like a lab. So they bred the Boykins to be about, I would say 40 pounds or so. Because in South Carolina back then, a lot of the duck hunting was out of a kayak or canoe. So you can't have a big 120-pound lab jumping out of a kayak. It's going to flip you. Whereas you can do a 40-pound dog and then you can easily pick it up and put it back in the kayak once he retrieves your ducks. So they were bred to hunt the smaller swamps and stuff like that. I thought about getting a lab because I do a lot of duck hunting in different areas all over the U.S., but I just love the personality of the Boykins. Some people maybe don't appreciate their personalities because they have spaniel tendencies, but they're funny. I mean, they do crazy things. Sometimes they want to hunt, other times they're ADD, but it comes with the personality, so I enjoy it. But yeah, for me, the Boykin does everything I need. I can hunt pheasants with them. I can hunt dove. I can hunt quail. I can hunt ducks. They're very versatile. So
Very good. And had you continued with your hunting interests coming out of, say, high school, going perhaps off to college? You said you were in the military. Did it kind of wane a little bit and come back, or had you always been consistent?
No, like I said, dad gave me the addiction, and high school, I was skipping class to go hunt. College, I was skipping class to go hunt. Now I use all my vacation time to go hunt. Yeah, it's never waned. That's always been my one thing. My dad doesn't hunt as much as he used to now, but he'll still come out with me a few times a year. But it's funny, I'll have like the best of friends during hunting season. And then I talk to them once or twice in the off season. But as soon as September hits, we're with each other every weekend hunting together. So
I love that. I love that. And by the way, Chris, if you've listened to a couple of the episodes, I will routinely state this, that I'm a very opportunistic podcaster.
I've heard that a few times, right?
All right. So one thing or two things I would like, we'll get this out of the way. Besides the headshot for you and our banners, I would love to have a shot of you and your dad.
Okay. Yep.
That's out there hunting, and if the dogs are with you, but I also want a shot of you with the dogs. And I know they're on the website, but
I can get you some for sure.
Fantastic. So, and I have to say, I'm a little envious. I'm probably a little bit older than you are, but my dad is gone now. But I think the idea of you and your dad going out together, shooting, enjoying each other's company, I mean, that's very special.
It is. One of my friends, he's a little bit older than I am, but his father passed away, and maybe a couple, I think he said 5 years ago, maybe. And so we were hunting in Kansas together. Yeah, Kansas. I was telling him about hunting with my dad and all that, and kind of to your point, he just said take advantage of it. Obviously, life is quick, but I have all these memories of hunting with dad. Some hunts were terrible, like nothing went right. The engine didn't work. The boat, was halfway broken. But those are the funniest hunts. And then we've had a couple good ones, but there's that camaraderie in the field that I think, especially a father and a son, it tightens up that bond a lot.
What was the best piece of advice your dad ever gave you with regard to hunting or life, for that matter?
Ooh, that's a toughie. Let's see. I don't the one piece of advice I'll never forget. I mean, this doesn't apply to hunting at all. But he said, I was maybe a little flirtatious when I was younger in my high school days. Besides chasing ducks and other birds, I was chasing women a lot. And
Chicks.
he said, women are investment in your time and money. Spend it wisely. And so that always kind of stuck with me. But he has taught me a lot as far as he trained our dogs himself. So he taught me a lot about being consistent with the training of a dog, being patient. You can't, and I hate to say it, but training a dog is very similar to dealing with employees or clients. And you can't expect a dog to do something right if you haven't made sure that it never knows how to do it wrong, if that makes sense. So a lot of times people will have the dog sit and the dog will sit once, and then they expect it to sit every single time. Well, you need to practice that one sit until the dog never gets it wrong, not because they got it right once, if that kind of makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing dad's done is just instilled in me not only the want to hunt, but the appreciation for the history of the sport and the tradition, having respect to the animals, being big in conservation groups, and trying to be a good steward of the land and pass that along. I think that's probably the biggest thing.
When you begin to work with a dog, and again, you've got Traveler, your newest pup, and you've got Cooper, who's wisely enjoying probably the couch.
You're the retired life. Yeah.
Retired life. I'm sure you take him out on the occasional hunt here and there.
Yep.
At what age do you start to work with the dog to begin to imprint those behaviors you're looking for, the sit and those activities that go along with the hunting?
Some of that depends on the actual breed. So for instance, talk about a lab guy and a Boykin Spaniel guy. A lab will naturally mature much faster and they just grow up faster, they mature faster. And it depends on the dog a lot too. I've had friends that we just had to take a back seat for a while. I've heard of professional trainers that sent a dog back and said, hey, let's wait a year. Give me the dog back after a year and we'll see how it's changed and matured. I think one of the worst things people do is rush it, because they see all these cool videos and they see all these dogs just doing amazing things out in the field and they want that right now. And that's not going to happen. As long as you get a dog that has the right bloodlines, because in my opinion, the bloodlines do matter. Not saying you can't go. My friend rescued a Boykin, and that Boykin is phenomenal in the field. It's got a bunch of what you call hunt titles and field trial wins, but that's the exception. If I want to increase the chances of getting a good bird dog, I need to make sure it has good genetics. So with that being said, I don't have to teach my dogs to fetch. They naturally want to go pick something up. I just have to teach it to bring it back to me. And so once you teach that, same thing like a pointer. I've seen videos of German short-haired pointers that were only 10, 12 weeks, and they see a leaf blow and they naturally just get in their stance and they pick up the front paw and they point at it. So that's just in their blood. You just have to teach them what to point and then how to fetch and bring it back to them. So as far as the basic stuff, you let a puppy be a puppy. Once they get to be a couple months, then you can start doing sit and stay. Basic obedience is the biggest thing. And then once they kind of get the concepts, then you can kind of teach them how to fetch. We call them marked retrieves. So if you throw a what we call bumper or even a tennis ball and they see it, you train them to go straight out, pick it up, come back. That's a mark. He saw it. Then as they get older, you can start training blind retrieves, which is where you line the dog up and you send it. And then if you whistle, the dog will stop and look at you and you can tell it right, left, back, and you can direct the dog. And that's that upper level training that really a mature dog is going to be get. But if you try to do that too early, it's just going to confuse them. So it kind of depends on the dog, but basic obedience, couple months. Actual fetching, same thing. You start doing the basic marked retrieves about a couple months, and then depending on the dog, about a year, maybe 2 years to do the advanced stuff.
Very good. Yeah, I have friends that train Belgian shepherds for sheep herding, and
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, those
yeah.
are crazy. They had an expo at Seawee actually, I'll tell you what, so I didn't see it, but they told me that on Saturday, they had an expo of the sheep herding dog.
Okay.
And a person that was watching the expo. So there's a ton of people with their own dogs. I brought my own dogs. Somebody that was watching their dog, I think it was a lab, broke through the fence and chased the sheep. And so the shepherd dog was just kind of sitting there like, what's going on? Well, the owner finally got his lab, but it chased the sheep about, I'll say, a quarter mile down the way. And so the guy that had the sheep herding dog did his whistle that basically said, go get the sheep. Sure enough, and this is in Charleston, this is in the city, went, got the sheep and herded all the way back. And so he said, what better demo than that? And I was like, man, that is just impressive.
I love that. I love that. I'm thinking now I've got to invite my friends on, but they're shy and we'll have to talk vicariously about them. But so, I mean, the dogs just sound fascinating. And I hope sometime you get far out west here and you bring them
Yeah,
along and I
yeah.
get to meet them because I love dogs. I absolutely.
I've made it my goal to get Traveler, basically as many different species, but also just as many states as possible. We hit a lot this year, and we spent a lot of days out west. We didn't get Colorado, but we did North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Kansas, and Nebraska this year. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll add Colorado on the list.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So, what is your preparation in order to go out on a hunt? And this could be, I imagine there's two ways to look at this. One, it's a short distance. You get in your car and you go driving versus getting ready to go out and visit another state. That probably takes a little bit more effort, I would imagine.
Yeah. So the biggest thing with hunting is scouting. I would say probably 85% of making a good hunt is knowing where to go. We call it if you're duck hunting, we call it the X. I can literally be on a river and the ducks, for whatever reason, want to be 100 yards upriver. They will not come to me unless I'm where they want to be. So scouting is huge. That's true for really any hunting, whether it's turkey, deer, bird hunting, and just knowing your quarry. I think I'll give you a perfect example. So the first year I went to North Dakota last year with Traveler to pheasant hunt, I was by myself before I met up with a friend of mine. And so all I knew about pheasant hunting out west was what I had seen on videos. And so if you watch, there's a show called The Flush. It's a great show. But they're walking through these nice fields. It's not too bad of walking. It may be like hip high. And so I went out there and we shot maybe one or two, and that was it. Well, then when I met my friends that actually hunt there and live there, we started walking through just nasty cattails, rough walking. It sucked, but all the birds were there. And I just didn't know that's where they wanted to be. So doing your research about the quarry is huge. So yeah, scouting, just knowing about the animal, the environment, what they like, what they don't like, what their habits are. Planning a trip, for instance, when we go out west, we do everything ourselves. I occasionally I'll do a guided hunt, but normally we just do it on our own. It's actually not that difficult. I wrote an article on it as far as a packing list of the biggest thing for me is just make sure I have enough food for the dog and just make sure that I have a dog first aid kit. I mean, I hate to say it, I don't care if I get hurt. I'm more scared if he gets hurt. So there is a lot to it, but I think it's more intimidating for people than what it should be. It's not. I mean, I do it every year, and I'm not the smartest person out there. So if I can figure it out, just about anybody can. But yeah, as far as hunting and planning a trip, scouting, and then just knowing what you're going after.
Okay. And you'd mentioned that on your website, perhaps some of the articles that you've written kind of detail
Yeah.
some of the equipment.
Yep. And it's just a generalized article. It's nothing too specific, but it's just things that, I mean, when I was pitching the article to a friend of mine, she said, basically it's a top 10, or not top 10, but it's just 10 things to remember to bring on a hunt. And she said, yeah, don't forget the dog. I said, well, of course you're not going to forget the dog. And she was like, Chris, you'd be surprised at how many people tell me they leave for a big hunting trip and they forgot the dog at the house and they have to turn around after 15, 20 minutes and go get him. And I was like, oh, I guess I can understand that. You're so excited, you just forget it. So thought that was pretty funny.
I like that. I like that a lot. Is there a special piece of equipment that just kind of has sentimental value or just use value that you bring with you year after year?
Um, Not yet. And I say that because like I said, my dad is very old school. He's worn the same hunting jacket that I think he bought in 1981, 1983. I think for their first wedding anniversary, my mom bought him a old Spanish double barrel 10 gauge, which nobody shoots anymore. Very outdated, heavy, but he loves it. So I think if I ever get that heirloom, either one of them, that will be the thing that I will carry and be one of those things that I hunt with once in a while. I've started to grow a emotional attachment to a few jackets of mine. They're all torn up and ripped up, but they just fit right. So I think that's the biggest thing. I am kind of a gearhead as far as getting new equipment. My friends love it because if I order something that doesn't fit me, I don't return it. I just give it to them. So every year they're like, "Oh, what do you got for us this year, buddy?"
You're a good friend.
Yeah, well, I'm just too lazy to return it. So I'm like, you know what, y'all can have it. So yeah, I don't really have anything sentimental, at least not yet. But
Okay. Where do you go to get the gear? I mean, literally, I live right above an REI. I would imagine
okay, yeah,
you're not going to go to an REI for
no.
nothing.
What?
Maybe
So
some line.
you could get actually some probably pretty decent upland hunting pants, as long as you're not walking through thorns and stuff like that. Like I like lightweight, breathable pants, and a lot of hiking pants double very well for that. Now they won't protect you from thorns, but if I'm walking cattails, they're pretty good. But there's the big chain stores as far as Cabela's, Bass Pro Shops. I mean, there's so many different outlets. It's out there. You just got to Google duck hunting gear and you'll get thousands of hits on stuff. So
I would imagine. Now, when did the writing start to take shape for you? Because I was reading a number of the articles you've got on the website, and we met through the OWAA, and so I'm curious how you began to incorporate writing into this really amazing hobby of yours.
So that's kind of funny. My dad's always been a big reader. My mom and dad got me instilled on that. And so growing up, my mom always said she didn't care what we read as long as we read. We could read Sports Illustrated, we could read Outdoor Life. It didn't matter, just in some sort of books. So I guess actually right about this time last year, there was a new podcast and magazine called Hunting Dog Confidential. And it was hunting related, but it's more geared towards the breeds. And like, it's a very interesting podcast. They go through the history of every breed of dog pretty much, and even some non-hunting dogs, but how they came about. And it ties into the culture of where that dog came from, why this dog does that, why this dog does that. And it's very interesting. And they tied into what was going on in the world and just really how dogs are tied into human history. It's very interesting. So I was joking with the editor, Jennifer Wapinski, that they didn't talk about Boykin Spaniels enough. And so she said, well, you should write an article. I said, I'm not a writer. I don't know how to do that. Well, that kind of planted a seed. And so one night I was flying home and I may or may not have partaken in a few bourbons on the flight. Course. And so I got the writing juices flowing and I wrote a quick, silly story about one of the hunts that I did with my dad. The motor didn't work. We had to walk the boat back. So I wrote that. Well, that got published by the Boykin Spaniel magazine. So Jennifer saw that and then sent me a Instagram message and said, hey, I saw you just wrote a story. You can write one for us now. And so that kind of got started. I enjoyed the process. People seemed to like what I was writing. Most of my writing is more, I guess, more funny. I try to instill some sort of lesson in there, but a lot of it, I just want to make people laugh and just provide entertainment. So that kind of snowballed. It went well. So I try to write maybe a story or two every month or so.
Okay. And in addition to the magazine and and participating with this podcast, is where else have your articles been published?
So yeah, Boykin Spaniel Magazine, Hunted Dog Confidential, Sporting Classics Daily. There's one more I'm missing. And then I have submitted 2 others that I'm waiting. They haven't been published yet. So, and then I started kind of writing some side ones, just blogs on my own website. I have a couple, I'm working on a review of a lodge that I went and hunted with in Maine this year. So I got to finish that and get those to those guys. But it's been a very interesting experience learning how the whole writing world works and doing the queries and submitting your stories. Edgar's helped out a lot with that. And I guess the requirements, I forgot the term now, but when you send in a query, what do they want? How many words? What format? What kind of stories do they like? And then the other thing too that I never really realized is if I want an article that's applicable to fall, I need to send that either now or maybe in the summer. And magazines are working so far ahead of their schedule. Yeah, so it's been interesting. But yeah, I kind of got into the writing world by accident, but I'm enjoying it so far.
That's a good accident, Chris. That's a good
Yeah.
accident. What has been your aha moment with regard to the writing now that you've been published and more people are getting to know you because of the writing?
I think just talking to Edgar and then a couple editors that really kind of helped me out. Chris Ingram, he edits Gundog magazine. I probably bother him 2-3 times a week for ideas or what I'm thinking and bounce it off of him. Let's see, I talked to Matt Soberg today. He's the editor for Cubby Rise. So just, I guess the aha moment was when they gave me feedback of actually saying, hey, we do like your style. We like this. And if you flesh this out, this is a little bit better. So when they give me that feedback, I guess it's one thing if a friend or somebody says, hey, we really like it. To me, it's something else when like an actual editor of a big magazine says that. Cause I'm like, oh, all right. Well, I guess it must be halfway decent. So
Sure.
Yeah, that was the aha moment, I guess, when I get that.
Excellent. Now, you mentioned on the show notes, or actually, I think it was the website, your love of bourbon.
Yes.
So let's hear about that.
So that was also instilled in me by my dad.
You got a great dad, let me tell you.
Yeah, he's a pretty good guy. He is a self-proclaimed bourbon snob. I remember when I was little, he used to always say that, or not little, but younger, that he had this handwritten list of bourbons that he kept in his wallet of ones that he tried and ones that he was trying or wanted to try. And so, I don't know, maybe 7 years ago, we were at a restaurant and I forgot what we ordered, but he busted out this list and crossed it out. And I was like, Dad, that's a real thing? He goes, oh yeah, I've had it for 15 years or 20 years or whatever it was. So yeah, I like to partake in the nectar of the earth. And I've been lucky that since I travel so much for work, I can try different types of bourbons around the country and experience those wonderful moments of life.
There you go. I feel the same way about coffee, by the way. I mean, I'm a sunrise and a coffee kind of guy.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that. Yeah.
Cannot go wrong with that. So when you're out hunting, are you camping out in the open land? Are you going back to the local motel? What's going on there?
Kind of a combination of everything. And see, when I go to North Dakota with my buddies, so I kind of have 2 separate trips to North Dakota. One trip is duck hunting. We stay in a hotel and then we just go find spots. Then when I do my pheasant hunting trip, we stayed in my buddy's RV and that was our camp. I've stayed in primitive cabins. I have camped out for a hunting trip. So it kind of depends on where I'm at, what the weather's looking like. I've stayed in state lodges in Kansas that were on a reserve, and that was pretty cool. So kind of everything. It just kind of depends on what we're going after, what the temperatures are like. I've slept in the truck twice, so I've done that before.
Well, I'm thinking because of the bourbon and camping and a campfire.
Yes.
And the dogs curled up next to you. That's got to be something special.
That's the moment when you, whether you bag birds or not. There's a famous quote by Gene Hill, and I'm going to butcher it. He's one of my favorite writers, but it goes basically something to the effect of, if you come home with a wet dog smelling of gunpowder and you can pour yourself a whiskey at the end of the day, it was a good day. And that's kind of where I'm at. It's, like I said, the shooting of the birds is a bonus. Being out there to be able to be with my friends, the second group that I hunt with in North Dakota, I only see them basically a week because they live in North Dakota or Iowa. I live in Virginia. So I see them a week every year, but I talk to them every single day. So the friendships that Edgar and I, we talk every day. I've never met Edgar, but we talk every day probably for last 8 months. So there's that camaraderie that you have. And like you said, you finish the hunt, you can go back to the campfire, have a couple of drinks, maybe a cigar or two, and just share stories and joke on each other for missing. And that's the fun of it.
I love it. I totally get it. I was out with friends this past weekend, just enjoying the stars, and it was BLM land, so we couldn't have a fire, and it was cold, but it was still a good time with some adult beverages and some cigars.
Yeah, there's just something about being outside.
Yeah,
that I think is still innate in us as humans, but you kind of get a chance to also slow down and get away from the distractions of it all. And you're really, especially if you don't have cell service, then you're really with the people. I mean, I mean, obviously when I was younger, before cell phones, you actually had to talk to the people that you're next to. Now people get so distracted and stuff that even if you're talking to them, they're halfway listening. So that's the other benefit of just getting out there. You just have to be with the people next to you. And I think it builds a relationship even better.
Okay. How do you see your work and this passion for hunting and this new, I don't know, I call them side hustles of
Right. Yeah.
writing.
Uh-huh.
How do you see your future kind of evolving? Any particular way with between the work and this
Mhm.
interest in the writing?
Yeah. So I'm a consultant professionally. That's my actual job, is consulting with different businesses all over the country. And so it really kind of clicked last year. I don't know why it took me so long, but hey, if I'm traveling for work already, I could combine my travels for work into hunting trips. And so then when I started writing, I'm sitting in a hotel by myself 90% of my week. Occasionally I'll go out with a client or something like that, but normally I'm just sitting in a hotel. So what better way to spend my nights than maybe get a bottle of bourbon and start writing? And so I can combine all three of those together. So if I have a client in Wisconsin, I can drive from Virginia, Wisconsin, bring the dog with me. We can do a quick hunt, then I can work, I can write about it, and then I can go to my next client. So yeah, as far as kind of combining all three, it's kind of a perfect scenario. I really want to hone my craft and get better at writing. That's the biggest focus. And you only do that by writing more.
Definitely that. Now, will you be able to attend the annual conference for the OWAA in
I'm
Casper?
hoping so. I'm hoping so. I got to look at travel as far as where I'm going to be as far as accounts during that time. But typically I can get my company kind of, as long as it doesn't cost too much extra, they'll fly me wherever I need to go for the weekend,
Right.
and I can fly somewhere else.
I know I'll be there because I've
Yeah.
already got the reservations, and I know
Right.
there's a couple other guys out there that like bourbon too. So
It'd be dangerous.
I think I think there's gonna be a little danger going on. So, Chris, if we could, or you could, leave with our listeners some kind of an insight. I mean, you're a successful consultant. You've been passionate about hunting nearly all your life. And again, just hearing you share about the stories with you and your dad, and just kind of you light up when you talk about that, and which is wonderful, and just friends and the experience of just getting out there. Obviously, Cooper and Traveler. What kind of insight would you like to leave with our listeners, whether it be another quote, a book, a philosophy? What would you like to share?
I think kind of like what I was saying, as far as finally clicked that I can go do these trips. And so whether it's a hunting trip, a hiking trip, I used to do a lot of obstacle course races, and people would always say, "Oh, I can't do that. Oh, I can't do that." And yeah, you can. You just need to take that step and do it. And so, obviously the old saying is life is short and carpe diem and all that stuff, but it all sounds like cliches, but if you just go do it, and you're going to get so much more out of life. I've realized now that, I love my job, but there's got to be that work-life balance. And so I take a lot of vacation during wintertime because that's my passion. I want to go hunt and travel the country with my dogs. So as far as insights, are just find what you love, and you can, to your point earlier, you can make it into a side hustle, or you can also just go make memories. No one wants to remember the days that there's a quote about hunting that your kid's never going to remember the day that he sat there and played video games all day. He's going to remember the days that he was out in the field. And that's how it was. I mean, I had video games when I was little. I don't remember playing, but I remember hunts with dad. I remember the car rides with my dad when I was 8, listening to AM radio at 3:00 in the morning. I remember dad waking me up to go hunt, and me being cranky because it was 3:00 in the morning and I was a teenager and stuff like that. As far as insights, I would just say, just go do it. Take that step for whatever trip you're thinking about doing.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for sharing that. It hits home for me, and in a way that's a very coaching-esque. So as a career development coach myself,
Mhm.
that insight is very much a part of the conversation I would have with a client. Is just got to do it.
Mhm.
And doesn't matter if you fail or not, you did it, you tried it, you got dirty, and you got off the scenic route into a
That's right.
little adventure. So I love that.
And you grew. Everything's a growing moment. Even like I said, if you weren't successful, you still grew.
Definitely that. Chris, before we head out, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work, where are the best places for them to go?
Probably Instagram, The Hunting Traveler. That's with 2 L's. I spell it the English way. And then on Facebook, Chris Midgette. And then the website, same as Instagram, thehuntingtraveler.com.
All right. And by the way, Grammarly does not like Traveler. It keeps
It
wanting
does,
to
it
correct
does
it on
not.
me.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's like, and I had to go back and check your website a couple
Yep.
times just to make sure.
So
So
he was named after, I was raised in the South, so he was named after Robert E. Lee's favorite war horse, which was Traveler. Robert E. Lee liked the Old English spelling with 2 L's. Well, when I was thinking of his name, Chris Stapleton's Traveler was on the radio. He spelled with 2 L's. I travel for work, so it kind of fits. So that's how he got his name.
it's perfect. It's perfect. Well, listen, Chris, thank you so much for joining us on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. It's been a pleasure. I definitely hope we get to meet in Casper. And if not, I enjoy your work and seeing you post on Facebook and on Instagram. I'm going to continue to really kind of keep an eye on you. And really, again, I appreciate just you showing up for the Outdoor Adventure Series. It's been great.
Thank you, Howard. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it.
All right. Listen, stay on the line. We're going to do a quick close and you and I can have a final chat. Okay.
Oh, sounds good.
Perfect. All right, folks. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Our guest today was Chris Midgette. Now, Chris, and really just passion for hunting and his dogs, the Boykin Spaniels, Cooper and Traveler, and just, and really for me, just kind of hearing Chris talk about the stories of he and his dad and going hunting and spending quality time together. I mean, what a wonderful way just to kind of enjoy just being outdoors, doing the things you like with the people you love and with trusty dogs at your side and just enjoying the best life possible. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Do visit us on the Outdoor Adventure Series website. So it's outdooradventureseries.com. We are also on Facebook, the Outdoor Adventure Series, and we are officially now on our LinkedIn company page, the Outdoor Adventure Series as well. And you can also listen to us on all the major podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, and a host of other podcasting directories. And please share this episode, like it, comment on it, let us know what part of the episode you enjoyed most. And hey, if you're going to go check out a Boykin Spaniel, go do that. Let us know. But above all, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, get out there, enjoy. If that thought about I need to get out and do something kind of crosses your mind, well, make plans to do that. There's the TV and the binge watching, the video games are all going to be there when you get back, but get out there, enjoy yourself, and enjoy nature at its finest. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, have a phenomenal day, and we will see you on a future episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Take care now.